Hi everybody, welcome to the Den. Thanks very much for tuning in. In this little series of videos, I'm going to go through some scenery options that you can bring into your games and have a look at the different varieties of scenery options that are out there. Now, I'm not going to be talking in this series about the minis and things like that. I'll do some separate videos on minis if people want them, how to use resin printers and so on and so forth. And I had posted a number of bits on a resin print challenge where I was doing the Gloomhaven. Now I want to talk specifically mentioning about Gloomhaven, but these systems are available across your whole D&D adventures and anything else that uses flooring and walls and doors and those sort of things. So whilst we're focusing on this, please don't think that these systems, the one thing about these systems is that once you have set them up and decorated them and got them ready, they are to be used in other games, because there will always be a Gloomhaven 2 somewhere along the line, and there's Descent, and there's a few other games out there that you could use this treatment on. So we're going to be looking in this episode on a few different game systems that you can look at, and this is primarily for people who are looking to print their own material and or get an external to print, like a forge, somewhere like that. Okay, so in this episode it's about the flooring. Now, flooring generally comes to us in games represented generally with cardboard layouts. Now in the Gloomhaven, for instance, and it will be for many other games, certainly Descent, you get cardboard pieces that have little numbers. Okay, and then you look at your mission and then you set them up accordingly depending on the mission you are in. Now these are very colourful, they represent all sorts of different areas and you know, foliage and that sort of thing, but they're cardboard, and yeah, while they serve a purpose, people want to make them real. And I would actually say that if you are stepping into pimping your game where you want sort of realistic scenery and you want to get more immersive in the experience, I would have said actually to start with floor tiles, because the tiling part actually is not as labour intensive as you might think. And I do have another video on where I talk about the tile sets and things that I get involved with, but from that you can take on how to put, you know, the items together and how you can get the content on and everything like that. So that's good. So we're going to be talking about those, and there's a number of different systems. I may have got them all. I may be missing the odd one. If I am missing the odd one and you're a designer and you say, well actually I've got this flooring system and you didn't mention this, because I couldn't find it. I sort of had a scour through some of what I was looking for was the main types, okay, for your choice if you choose to bring flooring into your system. So without further ado, let's get the camera set up and let's start having a look at some of the different systems. So the first system or method that you can come across to put flooring tiles as used as overlays instead of your cardboard would be these particular types, where you have pre-printed designs that follow along with the requirements of the game. So for instance, these certain shapes will equal, and in the case of Gloomhaven, they will equal a particular tile layout. And I'm not familiar with the whole concept of the numbers and so on, but that, say, could be tile C, you know, layout C, and that could be tile G, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, they're all printed flat with the design that you want on. So that's what we would normally call a man-made stone, and very simply you print that out and then dry brush that, and then literally for setup you would just go and put the relevant pieces together depending on what your scenario is. Now the one thing, now these were put together, you'll find these on Thingiverse through Arbros. Arbros is a really good designer, has lots and lots of really interesting bits. In fact, I use a lot of his walls and things like that, and that's really good. And those are absolutely, yeah, I mean, they print there. The only thing that you have to be careful of is that you get them relatively flat, so that's not a problem too much, but there you have it. And so you can just have those stored up and then pull those out, and then they just slot together really nicely. And one of the other things Arbros did try and do was make these double-sided, because as we know in our cardboard variations, they're double-sided. And let's see if one of these matches this. I know that it doesn't. No, I've got the wrong. I haven't got one pre-print. I wasn't going to print all of them on there, but as you can see, they are double-sided. And what Arbros tried to do, which to make things easier, was to actually double-side them. And there's a pattern on that side and sort of more of a pattern on that side. I'm not 100% convinced about it. I mean, if you were just painting these, then that would be fantastic. You could just paint those, and but obviously you're not going to get the same detail as you wanted on there. So there was an option. He had made a number of these, but it looks like a bit of a project that he'd sort of parked to one side for a bit, which is fine. I can actually get that, because you know it's a lot of work to chop these up. So realistically, as I was saying, you can print these as they are, and they will just be laid out nice and flat. Now, what are the pros to this is they're quickly out, they're quickly on the table, they're nicely slotted together, and you're ready to go. Now, what are the cons? Well, if you think about it, in Gloomhaven, the amount of pieces that you're going to need. So if you elect that you need, you know, these are only single side printed, you're going to be stacking up absolutely piles of these. So storage could be an issue from this, which is, you know, is maybe a bit of an issue on there. But once again, you are fixed. The other negative to this, as I use it as a negative, is this is fixed to Gloomhaven for this particular game. So you can't use this in any other game, all right? So you're going to be pushed on. One thing also to look out for is if you're going to combine these with walls and things, okay, they have to be the same dimensions. And I'm going to come on to the dimension things. So this is the Arbros walls. We're going to look at walls and bits and pieces in a later episode, but as you can see, they fit very nicely for my walls, and I've got some other bits and pieces there, so they go very nicely together on there. So that's an option that you can look at doing, where you just use the print off the flat pieces, but obviously you're going to be amassing a big collection, which is fine. But not all of them have been generated. So for those people that like to delve with Mesh Mixer, which is the program where you can cut the meshes up and so on, you could be generating your own files on there, but you are going to be producing quite a number. So let's have a look at another system. This one, I'm going to show you this from here. It's from a system called OpenLock, which is a sort of a base system that's been developed. If you go onto OpenLock, you will see huge amounts of scenery designers that have used the OpenLock system. And I'm just going to show you this little part. These are actually components from the Axolot. I'm going to put all the links and names and things on the description so you can follow those through there. But essentially, these parts were from the Axolot system. That's a chap that does a lot of scenery designing, has had quite a few successful Kickstarter campaigns on selling the STLs and so on. Some really interesting material on there. So these are components on it, but the fundamentals remain the same. So essentially, you have this base structure, which obviously that's like a 2 hex piece on there. Your scenery tiles per se are printed as separate tiles, and the idea being is there's a little bit of a sort of locking mechanism underneath, alright, and the idea being is that would sit on there like that, and there you have that built. Now not everything's that size, is it? So we can actually print out. I'm going to break these apart. I didn't print out any triples because there will be some triples around, but essentially I would make my flooring up through a series of putting these parts together. Now they are held together with these little clips, and you can punch those clips in there, and then that would go on. I'll just get one of those there, and that would snap onto there, and so I can build up my base with all these clipped items, and then when I'm finished with that I can just go over and I can put my tiles on as I proceed. Now the orientation is important, so they would sort of snap in together, and I'm starting to build up my thing. So it's an elegant little system. There are some end pieces so you can have quite a tidy finish on. One thing, once again, if you are mix and matching it with any other stuff, you must make sure this actual set does in fact. Now there are walls to this system. The chap that made this did his own walls and things, so you are limited to using the walls that were designed for the system. Although, you know, I'm sure that some of the more open lock things you'd have to have a look around so that they would sit together. Okay, so we haven't got it. So it raises quite high. You would actually see quite a bit of you know, depth to this item as we go through. So we snap that one in there and then put that into there, and of course my only other concern then is making sure that we've got the orientation, like in this, of the floorboards in the right way. So we'd have to be thinking a little bit more about how I was going about my layouts. However, in this particular one, the relief on the parts is really nice and deep. I only printed off some sample pieces just to have a look. It's not the only thing I have with the open lock system is you've got all these parts. There is a lot of moving parts, as I like to call them, in there. You've got to have all these clips printed off. You've got to have, you know, the base frames and that. I find that necessarily these didn't always, you know, they start snapping in at once, which is fine, but then depending on the material and material quality, it's not so much material quality, it's only PLA. It's going to wear down. It's like buying cheap Lego bricks. After a while their tolerances, you know, it's a soft plastic, it's going to start moving around. However, I do imagine that they'll stay in place for some considerable time, and we shouldn't have too much problem. But there's a lot of moving parts to this system. I haven't got a full layup on it. One of the other things that needed to be careful of is the material. You're going to have to experiment in printing different materials for these clips, and the reason is that some will go in better than others. This material I had for the grey was a little softer than the purple that I had lying around, and as you can see it takes a little bit more effort, so you need a bit more flexibility, and that can come with different materials. Okay, so you're going to have a little practice, because the last thing you want to be doing is trying to force these things in, you know, spending ages putting all these clips in. So you've got to clip them up, you then got to put your part on, and then you're going to split your overlay tile. But this system is moving to where I much prefer things where it's a more modular system. It once again shows itself that this can be used for other things. If you needed some different designs, you could easily go on and open up some different designs. And the other thing about the open lock system, it's very well supported. Really dig into things. You can actually get planners, you can actually get Visio templates that will enable you to plan your dungeon and so on. So we have that particular system there. So I'll push that one out of the way. So like I say, there's a lot of bits and bobs to that one. So what was the next thing? Well, I came across this the other day. Somebody mentioned it, and it's following on from the system I've just shown you. Very simply, this is the Hex system, and the idea behind this is that the parts will be held together with magnets. So essentially you print out your subframe, as it were, and there it is. There's a little hex subframe, and there are little spaces in here where you buy these little mini magnets, 3mm by 3mm magnets. Now I didn't get a chance to buy any little magnets, but I think we can all get the idea. In that, as you put these systems together, and magnets are oriented, they will snap together and stay magnetized. So they're going to stay in that part. The tiles themselves, so your particular tiles, are printed as separates. And so you have the little thin tile there, that's a man-made stone. And the idea being is that you can then get all those and you can then snap those in to your system. Okay, like that. And so on and so on and so forth. Now, that's the basic system. Now what the designers had done for this maglets is to produce actual frames of, you know, we're going back to where we had the A, B, C, D frames and things and so on and so forth. So that is effectively that system. So if you look at what we looked at before and the Hex system, that is it. Now the first thing you will notice is the tolerances. They are bigger, so you've got to be careful of that. Now, I mean, for like say those in mesh mixer and things like that, you can scale them down, but this is not something that perhaps you would use if you're mix and matching with other wall ideas and things. So you've got to be careful of that. So please don't embark upon, oh, I'll go and nail all this looks like the one for me, and then find out that actually you can't get any walls to fit, or you're going to have to get into mesh mixer and you're going to have to upscale in Cura and things like that. So it does start taking a little bit more technical things, but as gamers and things like that, we like to dabble. So strange enough, there was also a template part here to actually use with this system as well. So instead of this will enable you to use the axolot, so there was a little sort of extra template that you could use with axolot. You put a little magnet in there and a magnet in the bottom of that, and that's where it snaps on, and then they'll snap together. So there was a bit of a crossover from the designers on there. The only so I quite like that. I couldn't test it, like I say, with the magnets. I do get the point. These are only intended to be magnetized along the edges. What the designers have done is started to make these up for Gloomhaven specifically, but for those, you know, with mesh mixer and so on, you could actually just cut those out and make your own up. Once again, you perhaps don't want to be getting into that if you can help it, but these are for people who perhaps don't want to magnetize all these little bits. Cons. Well, I can't comment on the magnetized part of this, although the concept idea sounds like the only issue I had was the cleanup that you're going to have to do to these tiles. They don't snap in perfectly, and that's just 3D printing. So be prepared that you will be readjusting the size on these, or taking a little bit of effort just to prepare them. It's not going to be a huge amount, but they will all need to be prepared, and like I say, they'll pop out there. So I'll be interested. I'll be painting this up actually and just having a little trial. I do like the idea. Once again, it's a lot of moving parts, isn't it? Yeah, there's a lot of pieces there that will go for the things. Anyway, that's the Hex system. That also comes with its own walls and doors, bits and pieces. So explore that, have a look at that. That looks really interesting as well. So have a look through those. And while I just clear this desk away, I'll come back to the final system. Okay, and so the final system that I'm going to quickly show you is the one that was developed by Nesta. It's a bit of a combination of all the systems really, and it's the one that I much prefer to use and to put out there. But that's no bias. It just seems to be a little bit more elegant than the others. But firstly, it follows along. So essentially, I haven't sorted these through. But essentially, the part of the components is that you print these frames. Okay, some of them are quite large. I've got the fortunate of having about a 400 by 400 printer, and that is required for some of the things. But as you can see, these follow along with the patterns from the Gloomhaven game, and there'll be the A, B, C, D's, E, F's and so on and so forth. We'll ignore the purple one, and they will be printed out there. They're quite thin, and the idea is that you would print out your frames for the particular game that you're in. Let's just get rid of that a minute. and then you have the tiles. Now the tiles, and I'm going to reach down and grab a whole thing of these because I've actually got these in a bit of a storage box. But the actual tiles themselves, I did do a tile video, so if you want a little bit more information on how these tiles, so these are then printed with the particular relief on, so, and then literally they just sit on there and just partially clip in, and so you can very quickly lay up. There's a little bit of a snap in there, but they don't move around, they're very good. And there I can just put them all together like so, and very quickly put them on. So that is all that you're doing, is just laying them up like that into whatever the configuration is or the requirements of your scenario. Alright, and we have some of the different ones as well. Now, I'm not going to get into storage and one thing or another, but of course I do have some storage options. I'm going to look at those on different things. But as you can see, I can very quickly lay up my scenario. It's not going to be as quick as obviously where we put our first ones that we looked at down. And just to give you the idea, put those in together. So we've got our rocky area there, and this particular thing I've got my floorboards that I can put in. Once again, these will sort of sit on the top there and just snap into place like so. Oh, get that around the right way. And in some of the adjustment parts, as I cover in the video, there is a little bit of prep to these, okay? You do have to take a little bit of it off at the back. It's not a big deal. They're actually paint up pretty quickly, and they will just sit in like that. So you're looking for a quick, so there we have a sort of my floorboardy type produce. There we go. Okay. So there is that system. Now, pros to this, obviously quite a quick setup. Once again, with anything that uses these single hex areas, there is, you can store those a lot easier things. Now, the other thing is obviously pros, if your game changes, the most you're going to have to reprint is these frames. So as a game comes out, those frames will be reprinted. They're also matched in with many of the common walls and doors and bits and pieces that you can get. So there's our little door on there. Okay, so we're good for that. Cons, there's a little bit of cleanup. You've got to actually split out the support material off the back of each of these tiles. There is a video on it. And you've also got to have a little tiny bit. Now sometimes on the printing you'll see those little wispy bits of filament string in there, nothing major. You just get a little sharp knife and just clean around that 2 seconds to do. So there is that system, and this is the preferred system that I like. I find that setup is very quick and easy. I haven't got as many moving parts to worry about, and it just slots in there nicely. Also, from a storage point of view, I got one of those art folders. I didn't really want to cover, but I can actually put them all in. I'm actually going to label these things up into the A, B, C, Ds, and I can actually then go in and pull those out from there. So that is the other system. It's made by, it was put together by a Nester. You'll find it on, I'm going to put the links on as well, but you have that system as well. So really that covers pretty much every sort of basic system. Now there will be variations on a theme for you. It really all depends. If you're a printer, I would print out, you won't be able to print out the Axolot because that is commercial, but he was on Kickstarter, so you can always go over there, and if you really fancy his system, he is taking late payments on that as well, so you can actually buy into what his STL world, and it's a lot of stuff that you get in there. It's very good value for money. So that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully there's something there that whets your appetite. Once again, you know, get out there, get painting, get doing. You know, it does bring realism to your game, and you know, look back. But like I said before, if you're going to start with any part, before you start getting into the walls and the doors and the one thing or another, which are a little bit more time, so start off your flooring. You can replace those tiles and get your characters out into that. So hopefully that's been of help. Thanks very much. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye now.